Hello and welcome to Weekly MTG. I'm your host, Blake Rasmussen. And we are here, as always, after a banned and restricted announcement to talk about it. But I'm saying it, but it's really kind of them. We had a couple. This one was a little bit different in that we combined our normal 60-card format, being our announcement, with our commander being our announcement. That's why I have two very special guests here. I have Gavin and Ian. Why don't you introduce yourselves real quick before we get started?
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Gavin Verhey. I'm a principal game designer on Magic the Gathering, but in addition to designing what the cards do, I also help run the Commander format panel and kind of am the liaison between Wizards and the panel for working on things like banned and restricted updates.
And I'm Ian Adams. I'm the product owner of Cardset on MTG Arena. I'm in charge of the part where you play Magic.
I like that part. That's a great part.
It's a
pretty
good part.
Part to be in charge of. So Ian is here because we actually had, in addition to the commander changes, a bunch of changes on arena-specific formats, namely Alchemy and Historic and Timeless. So we're going to start by talking about those. Then we're going to move into the commander changes and updates. And then we're going to take questions from you all. This is a show to just kind of cover the announcement, cover questions people have. We gathered some questions off social media in the past 24 hours. So we're going to hopefully cover as much as we can in the next hour. So why don't we launch into it? So Ian, we're going to start with Alchemy.
Sure.
Whole slew of changes.
Absolutely.
On rebalances.
Yes.
I don't know. This is certainly, if not the largest, it's one of the largest batches of rebalances.
Yeah.
What was the thinking philosophy going into this announcement?
So, I mean, what part of it was we're a little bit backdated. Things got chaotic at the end of the year. We would have liked to have gotten about half of these out. But as you both know, December is not a real month at Wizards of the Coast.
It's not a real month, yeah. It's like a third of a month.
So it all happened at once. Beyond that, most of these changes are cards that people crafted a lot, were excited about, and just didn't quite hit where they needed to be. We have tuned to hopefully make them a little more competitive.
Okay.
And then there are a couple in there, the Kona and Val, which are cards that were showing up a little problematically in competitive formats, and we tried to pull those back in a little bit.
Okay. Well, let's go card by card through these, and what you'll see up on the screen is going to be the original on the left, and then the rebalanced version on the right. So, Ian, it looks to me here, Kona just got a little mana bump up the curve.
Just slowing that deck down a little bit.
Okay.
You know, it's getting free cards out, getting the Omniscience out as early as it was going to be a problem. So we're just trying to see. Not kill the deck, just slow it down.
Now, I think most of the changes we're going to see are in that sort of tweak category.
Yeah.
Did you all ever discuss anything like, hey, maybe we change Kona's actual ability or anything like that, or was it always in the tweak category?
We talked about it. Anybody who reads through this group of changes can see they're all kind of in the tweak family. There was definitely... There was a goal with these changes to, especially with how many there were, we didn't want to create this big mental load of the words and a function of 12 cards have changed. Whereas if it's a power toughness here, if it's a cost there, that's a little bit easier to internalize quickly.
Okay. Plus, the game won't let you cast this if you only have 4 mana. So that's
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next up, we have Dazzling Flame Weaver. Ian, looks to me, this just got a mana and a power and toughness knocked off of it.
Yep, just shaved down to a little bit more of an aggro, speedy spot that seemed like it made sense.
Okay, and you mentioned that people, a lot of these cards are cards a bunch of people crafted, maybe anticipating they would be strong. So are you hoping this gives a little shot to the lizard archetype?
Yeah, that's kind of the hope here, is that this moves that deck into somewhat of a more competitive spot.
All right. Well, let's keep going through these. Next up, we have Tempest Trapper. It looks to me, even despite the font change, which we were all puzzling over at the beginning, it's just an image thing. It's not, yeah. But it looks to me here a mana down and a toughness down.
Yep. Where we slowed Kona down. A lot of these we wanted to speed up a little bit.
Yep. I dabble in some Alchemy, but not as much as other formats. Has Otters had an impact on that format, or are you hoping that this?
There's been some action with Otters. It's definitely one of the perennial, like the Otters Spellslinger deck has been something people want to make work. And we've been trying to give them the right cards to make that click.
Okay. Well, let's keep plowing through these. Sanguine Soothsayer. This one's been around for a little bit. What prompted this change now?
Really just, this is another one that got, out of all of these, this one was crafted a lot.
It's a really cool card.
It's a really cool card.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was getting played and it was dragging win rates down where we were, obviously people don't put decks in their cards in their deck to make them worse. But we were optimistic that, I think we were a little bit cautious here. A 2/2 flyer for 2 doesn't seem that out of control.
Yeah.
And I think we erred on the side of caution and decided to make this a little bit more competitive.
It's a very cool card when it goes off.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going. Next up, Charged Conjuration. So again, same card, knocking a mana off.
Yep.
That kind of cool Spellslinger thing.
Exactly.
All right, we'll just keep moving. We got a lot of cards to talk about today, so we're just going to keep going. Marshland Hordemaster. So this one had a few significant changes, it looks like. So knocking a mana off and 2 toughness.
Yep. And again, as with the other Lizard, part of the goal here is that deck is just more aggro than these expensive cards we're letting it be.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Okay. We'll keep going. Ethmeric Imagine Fiend. We were gazing at the art a little bit here because it's kind of great.
Yeah.
This is a weird card, but making it cheaper, making it a little smaller, seems to be what is this even aiming for? What kind of decks are using this?
Well, I'm trying to think about Ethmic. The goal here is to get it out. It was going to some Manifest Dread go wide decks. And it's another one where it being a 4-drop just made it too big of an ask for a deck that wanted to be low and wide.
Okay. Okay. All right. Next up, we have, I believe, Poltergeist.
Best name of the bunch.
It is the best name of the bunch. Yeah, it is a great name. Up to the ward and the toughness, which that one makes sense to me because you want it to attack. It needs to actually survive the attack to be good.
Yep. That's all that was going on there.
All right. We'll keep going. Little tweaks here and there. So this was an interesting one to me because I remember several months back the mouse deck in Alchemy, and there was a mouse deck because there were more mices. Overall, got a few nerfs, and then this one's getting a bit of a buff.
It is. I think most of the mouse deck got into a good, healthy place in Alchemy. This one needed a little bit of a boost to earn its spot in that deck.
Okay.
Just a little bit more resilient.
All right. Slightly more resilient.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little extra toughness there.
Yeah.
All right. Again, it's another one of those that needs to attack really to be solid, so surviving
You want
makes
to be able
sense.
to survive at least something.
At least a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, next card on the rebalance list, Network Marauder, a robot pirate.
Yep.
This one took me a sec to parse, but it looks like it's changing that buff from perpetually +1/+0 to perpetually +1/+1.
So it can get its toughness back where it was pretty easily, but it helps out more other cards
Yeah.
effectively.
Yep. Yeah, because it gets that enters in whenever an artifact you control attacks. Yeah. Okay. Great. Not attacks. Enters.
Yes.
All right. Continuing along here. Prototype X8. This one was a little extra tweak. The mana cost goes up. You glance at this at first glance, but it looks like the discount in that first line got bigger.
Yes, the discount got doubled. So this is basically if you're willing to commit to the strategy, this should be easier. And so this was we didn't want it to just be incidentally stronger, but for people playing that graveyard deck, it's kind of a reanimator. It should be in reach pretty quickly.
Cool. All right. We'll keep going with the rebalances. Nearly done with these.
Yep.
Sliver Weffinder
Just got bigger.
just got bigger.
Yep.
As all 5 color slivers should be.
Yeah, Gavin was like, yeah, it's got to be a 7/7. How can it not be? Yeah, otherwise the ability didn't change.
Absolutely.
All right, and continuing on. All right, so this one I think is worth talking about a little bit more. So this one was, this one's not a buff. This one got 2 mana added to it. And then it changes the trigger to dealing 2 damage and gaining 2 life. There's also that extra power there, but this one was part of a combo deck, correct? Okay.
So we're doing multiple things here. We are clearly slowing down the combo.
Yep.
We don't want this to be nearly as much of an early game, close it out as it was. There is also the intention of having the combo end faster. It's not a mistake.
I was wondering about that. I was like, it's twice as fast when it goes off. Yeah.
Once the combo starts, it's over.
Yeah.
So it might as well happen twice as fast.
Yes. Yeah. For those who don't know, it was a white-green card.
Moon Dancer, I think?
Yes, it's Moon Dancer's in there somewhere. That basically, whenever you gained life, it got bigger, and you scryed, which then, of course, would trigger this, dealing a damage, gaining life, which would then trigger that, and back and forth. And once the two were both out, it was pretty trivial to get them going and win. And they both cost 2 mana, so I can see why you bumped it up to 4. All right, I think that is the last of the Alchemy rebalances, and we can move on to Historic.
All right.
There we are. Okay, so these 4 cards were all banned in Historic. There's also some unbans we'll get to on the next screen, but this, kind of like Alchemy, was another big swing. Was this a backlog? Was this a change in philosophy? What are you thinking about Historic these days?
Historic definitely has seen a little bit of a change in philosophy. One of the ongoing challenges, we talked about this before a little bit, is that Historic really has very different meta games between best of 1 and best of 3.
Okay.
Best of 1 is played pretty casually. There's a lot of people who are happy to play a deck with a 45% win rate that is just cards they like, and it's a fun deck, and it's competitive enough to not feel like it's unplayable. You know? There's a lot of people. Some of your matchups are 60-40, some of them are 40-60. There's a lot less optimization happening. Best of 3, on the other hand, is a very optimized format. It's people playing a lot of the best deck and finding the absolute fastest, most devastating thing to do. And these, while a majority of our players are playing best of 1, these are pretty best of 3 targeted. And finding the things we could hit that kept that open, relaxed, everybody's kind of playing the fun thing that they want to play world of best of 1. Those decks as playable as possible while still taking out some of the heaviest hitters from best of 3 was really the goal.
Okay. So let's talk about each of these. What decks are these hitting? It's going to be kind of an obvious answer to the first one, but
yeah. Eldrazi's the big first one.
Yep.
That Eldrazi deck's been nasty, and they had a lot of redundancy in their mana base, and this is just a way to chip away at that a little bit. And slow that deck down ideally and not let it be quite so consistently playing those, huge cards on turns 3 and 4.
Yeah. Eldrazi Temple's busted. Who knew?
Yeah. Johnny obviously is hitting the energy deck that has been dangerously good since the day Modern Horizons 3 came out. That's been hit a couple times before, but is pretty resilient. Those are the two big focus decks, and then Crop Rotation and Scholar of the Lost Trove are sort of. Crop Rotation's always good.
Crop Rotation is always good. Yeah. So was that seeing play in like Lotus decks?
Yeah, those were in Lotus decks, and that one was showing up in more than one deck. Crop Rotation specifically, but
okay. Scholar of the Lost Trove was interesting to me because that one was not one that was on my radar. I dabble in Historic, but I end up playing more Timeless when I want my old card fix. Scholar was doing some weird things, is my understanding.
Yeah, I will admit this was one I didn't have Scholar's number. This was other people came in, and this was a little bit of a rogue deck, but that had very, very scary win rates.
Okay.
To my knowledge, it wasn't topping play rate at all, but where we saw it, it was very clearly a problem.
Yeah. I mean, I understand because it wasn't with like in Reanimate.
Yeah.
And it was somehow comboing off on turn 2, and yeah,
getting Scholar in the bin and reanimating, and
more things happen from there. Yeah. Okay. Interesting one. I wonder. It'd be interesting to see if that deck translated to paper anywhere. But Historic's a bit of an interesting crossover format where, Reanimate doesn't exist in many formats with Scholar of the Lost Trove.
No.
Now let's talk about the unbans, which are interesting as well, because I want to focus first on Force of Negation, Force of Vigor, and Endurance, because Historic has often had a philosophy about free spells where they've been pre-banned a lot of the time.
They have.
Yeah, so is this a philosophy shift?
This is. I don't know that this is a forever all the time philosophy shift, but there is an awareness that Historic, the threats had outpaced the answers for a while in Historic.
Okay.
We needed some ways to deal with these combo decks that were going off on turn 2, for example. We needed better ways of responding to just how good a lot of the other cards in Historic were. And so these unbans were pretty specifically either cards that we felt were safe given that philosophy change, or that directly responded to just how fast and dominant some of those decks had become.
Okay. I also see, Harbinger of the Seas, Magus of the Moon, messing with mana bases.
Yep.
Cool to mess with mana bases now in Historic?
It's cool to mess with specific greedy mana bases in particular, and to slow those down. And it's not an accident that it's Magus of the Moon and not Blood Moon itself. It's a little bit more interactable. It's a card that you can get rid of, but it might take you a little bit more time. Whereas Blood Moon, there's a lot of decks that see a Blood Moon and just don't work anymore.
Yep, makes sense. Agent of Treachery and Wilderness Reclamation have been on the list for a while.
Yes.
Is this just a case of the format passing them by, or were there specific items that brought them out?
Those ones are being unbanned, less of a philosophy change and more of a looking over old banned cards and asking, hey, is the justification for this ban, is it still there?
Yeah.
Does it make sense? And those were two that seemed pretty clear to us. The format had more than caught up with them.
Yeah. I don't know. I look at this graphic and I'm like, I got to play green-blue, I guess. I don't know what deck is playing Agent of Treachery, Harbinger of the Seas, and Endurance, and Force of Vigor, but we'll figure something out. Yeah. All right, so those are the changes in Historic. Before we move on to Commander, there was a change in Timeless.
Got one more.
Which is not a format that changes very often. The philosophy is very much like live and let die.
Yep.
but Necro is now an exception. So what prompted this?
It's really, really good. It's a really, really good card. And with Modern Horizons 3 being in there, you've kind of got 8 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Not exactly.
Necrodominance, yeah.
With Necrodominance around, you got more or less this effect.
Yeah.
Really, really consistently,
Yeah.
and it was something that we saw needing to tamp down on a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you expect that people will just keep their decks and shift to playing Necrodominance in its place, or
Most of the deck lists I saw were playing 4 and 4.
Okay.
So I'm imagining they will keep Necrodominance in the deck and run one Necropotence.
Okay. All right. How often do you all expect to make changes to Timeless?
It's definitely one that we want to be as hands-off with as we can.
Mm-hmm.
We'd rather, it's the last refuge for the cards that are too broken for any other format is Timeless, and you want to try and, as much as you can, to let things run their course and let players
do what they
have their fun with them, which they can.
Right.
There are things we've got our eye on. There are a lot of very strongly held opinions about strip mine in the format.
Mm-hmm.
So we are watching, we're paying attention, but nobody is itching to make changes in Timeless.
Okay. There are questions in chat around Arena. We're going to come back to that. I want to spend some time now moving on to Commander, and then we'll move back into the Q&A section, and we can talk about, there's questions about Brawl and other things, but I want to talk about Commander first. Gavin's been sitting here patiently, and he's just been waiting for the moment that he gets to talk about Lutri, because this was a big change. Not only was Lutri unbanned, but put on a list of banned as companion.
We'll call it the Lutri list.
The Lutri list.
The Lutri list.
The list of one.
Yes.
So let's start with Lutri.
Hello. Cool. So yeah, we unbanned 2 cards yesterday. These are things that we've been talking about for a little while now. I want to give a big shout out before I go any further to the whole Commander format panel. They've done a phenomenal job. It's been awesome talking with them and kind of iterating back and forth on what cards we wanted to touch here, as well as working with, of course, the Commander design team inside Wizards. And we had a Commander Summit here at Wizards last year where we got to talk about a lot of the stuff in person. So it's been a really great process. I remember it does not seem like that long ago, Blake, when people were perhaps on a couch not unlike this one talking about how Lutri was going to be pre-banned. Right? We
did do
it,
that. Yep.
We showed it off.
Yep.
Maybe in this very room. I don't remember. And
Time is a construct. Who can tell?
And said, "This is a card you will not be able to play with." We worked with the rules committee at the time to be like, "Yes, you can't." Right out of the gates, this one was going to be banned because the problem is Lutri's gameplay effect is totally cool for Commander. That's not an issue. It's just like a dual caster mage. The issue is that every blue-red deck, blue-red color identity deck for all time should always companion Lutri, right?
Yeah.
Because Commander is a singleton format. Unless you're playing, say, Petitioners or Dragon's Approach or something, you can always put Lutri in your deck. And we don't want to make this overhead of a card you should 100% always play, that you always have access to. It just gives blue-red a little bit of extra juice, which it probably doesn't need, and is something that is not that fun to have hanging over every single game. So it was banned right out of the gates. But there's a couple things. A, copying spells, fun. B, people love otters.
They're adorable.
Cute otter. Literally, I remember on day one, people were like, "How could you let this otter be banned? That's you're so mean." And then number 3, of course, with Bloomborough coming out over the past few years, the requests for this card have become more and more and more. Hey, I actually have a legitimate otter deck. This goes right in my spellcasting otter deck. Why can't I use this? Well, after some discussion, we're like, you know what? I want to give a shout out actually to Ben Wheeler, who kind of was the person to lead the charge on this in our summit. He's like, look, everyone wants to play with Lutri. We can do a ban as companion and take it off the ban list. And we started discussing it, and we're like, that makes a lot of sense. Now, one thing we're very careful about in Commander is having just a ton of extra lists.
Yeah.
You don't want to just proliferate lists everywhere. You already have a game changer list, which is a new thing that we've been premiering. But here's the thing about banned as companion. We're not really making more companions. The mechanic is pretty bananas. And the ones that exist currently, the other ones are all fine for Commander. There's not an issue for them. So this really will probably be for the entirety of Magic's history.
The Lutri list.
The Lutri list. Just literally Lutri. And it is the easiest thing to correct, right? If we sit down for a game, Blake, and you haven't seen this, and you flip over your companion, and you're like, I have Lutri as my companion. Well, A, one, we can just play Magic, and it's probably fine. But B, I can just be like, hey, did you know you can't do that? And you move Lutri off to the side, and your deck changes probably 0. You have a more or less the same gameplay experience. Which I have seen some people ask about, what about banned as commander? Which is fundamentally quite different, right? Because if we have that same experience, and you come with your Rafellos deck, and I'm like, did you know your entire deck is invalid?
Yeah.
And we can't even play a game of Magic, right? Which is quite a different story. So that's what was kind of going on with Lutri there. And I'm happy to have the Otter back. It's a great moment. Free the Otter.
Otter's free? Yay. All right. Biorhythm, slightly older card.
Yeah, this card's been banned for over 20 years.
For quite some time.
Over 20 years.
This was one of the original boogeymen of the format.
Yeah, and we've talked about this card. We talked about it last year when we unbanned the other 5 cards and kind of decided not to touch it at that time and see how things went. The thing about Biorhythm is it can be really strong. It can straight up end the game, right? If this card is cast and you don't have any creatures, you just die.
Yeah.
That is the game. It also, one thing that's been brought up is it disproportionately impacts the player to your right. Because imagine you cast this, you all have a few creatures in play. I've got 3 creatures, you all have 3 creatures or whatever. Well, the player to your right is the easiest person to attack and take down because there's 3 combat steps before you get back to that player's turn. But after a lot of discussion, we've unbanned Sway of the Stars and we've unbanned Coalition Victory. I think both those have turned out just fine. Worldfire was banned in the days before the Commander format panel. And those all turned out okay. And these kind of expensive mana cost cards, I think, are just having a higher and higher barrier to entry to be on the ban list, especially if they're non-creatures. The creatures you can reanimate, cheat out in all kinds of ways. But casting a Biorhythm early, granted it's green, you can ramp into it, but it's still a little bit tricky to do. And we're moving Biorhythm right onto the Game Changer list, so it won't show up at bracket 2. So there's a nice little safety rail there, right? And I've already had a few people tag me in their Biorhythm games. Some like, oh, this was really fun. And some like, no, this killed everybody. So we'll see what happens as time goes on. But one thing I think that is nice about it is that it's not just there to be used for evil and kill people right away. Sometimes you'll cast it and suddenly everyone's life total is 5. And you're like, wow, I have like it's a wild game on our hands. And so there are fun instances for Biorhythm too. We'll of course be following it, see what happens. But I think it seems pretty safe to come off, and we'll see what happens.
Now I want to talk bigger picture here a bit as well, because this is the first BNR, or the first bannings and unbannings for Commander since Wizards took over the format, since the introduction of the Commander format panel.
Well, we did do the fight last year.
Yeah, sorry. There was the initial one, and then we were like, we're not doing any for another year. Coming back. It's only really 2 cards. We'll get to the Game Changers in a second, but only really 2 cards affected. Did you all go into this thinking we want to take a light touch intentionally, or is this just where you landed after discussion of everything? Because there were a lot of cards people were guessing after.
Yeah, I would say that the answer to that is kind of yes. This is kind of where we landed after a lot of discussion, and we discussed many other cards, and 3 other cards we even discussed in the article, which maybe we'll talk about in a little bit. But also, I think we are happier in general taking a lighter touch because there's no rush, right? It's not like, oh, we have to unban Biorhythm today. It's more like, oh, let's look at it, peel off a couple cards, and then if that goes well, maybe we can come back 6 months or a year later and peel off some more cards. Because if we were to say unban 10, 15 cards at once, something like that, not that I'm even saying there are that many we would want to take off, to be clear, but if that's a lot of change all at once for a format that tends to be pretty stable, and if like 3 of those suddenly start causing problems, it kind of makes the whole ban process not look very successful. So I'd rather just take our time, strip back a couple cards here and there. But with that said, it's not like we're holding back bans, right? If there are other cards that we wanted to ban or unban at this moment and we felt confident in, we would do so. There are 3 other main cards we talked about, and I think we'll get into that probably in a little bit. But some of them were quite close to coming off of the ban list, but we decided ultimately, hey, we feel the safest with these 2. Let's engender some discussion in the community and listen to what the community has to say. Because ultimately, Commander is a community-driven format, and we want to listen to what people are saying out there. So when it's kind of a close call, well, there's no reason why we can't take a few more months and hear from the community. And I'm sure in the days to come, there'll be all kinds of thought pieces and podcasts and articles and videos made, and let's take all that into account, right?
Now, what have you all talked about what your sort of ideal cadence going forward here is?
Yeah, so one of the things I mentioned in the article is last year when we did those initial 5 unbans, we said we would not come back for the rest of the year.
Yep.
Right? We're like, we're not touching it this year. We're just going to let the year play out and make things kind of stable. This year we're not doing that. We can come back at any time, and as you alluded to earlier, we are not attached to the normal ban cadence, right? So if Commander wants to do something at a different time, we totally can. With that said, I don't want to come back every month and have a new BNR update for you. I think that's good for nobody. So I would guess, I say in the article, we were going to come back and talk some more this summer. I think I say May, June in that article, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
So you might hear more then. It might be later in this year, might be early next year. There's no set time necessarily, but you can definitely expect to hear something from us in that summer time frame where we talk about what we learned from talking about this, and whether or not there are any bans or unbans at that time is, I can't tell you, but we'll talk about stuff then for sure.
Great. All right, let's move on. We keep alluding to other cards. Let's talk about those other cards. So let's go on to the game changer ones. Let's start with the easy one, Biorhythm.
Yep. Yeah, so when a card comes off the ban list, our protocol is to move it onto the game changer list immediately.
Yep.
We can then shift it down if we need to, like we did with Sway of the Stars. But I think Biorhythm is one that will likely stay on the game changer list for a while, given that it quite literally changes the game pretty dramatically. We did not do that for Lutri, and the reason why we did not do that for Lutri is because the card text, totally fine in Commander. It's just the companion thing that was an issue, and that part is staying cut off, right? We're keeping him banned as a companion. So we're making kind of a one-time exception for Lutri, kind of like he had a weird exception to even get on the ban list in the first place.
Yeah. Lutri's just exceptions on exceptions.
Companions, we changed how those work. It's a whole situation. We're pretty happy with how the brackets are working overall and the game changers are working overall. When I sit down to play Commander, something in that sphere is almost always brought up. What game changers are you playing? What bracket are you? What is my deck? Like, these things have pretty much entered the nomenclature, which is great. And I love that people are using these as they're discussing their games. We don't really want to tweak the list that much more, maybe a card here, a card there, but we're getting pretty happy to where the game changer list is. We only wanted to add one card in this go around, which is Farewell. There's a pretty large which, compared to previous updates where we've been like, these 10 cards are coming on, or these 15 cards are falling off, or whatever. Farewell, just adding one card means we're really kind of honing in on where we want this list to be, dialing it in. Farewell, we added here, I talked in the last article last year about how with high mana cost cards, we want to be very diligent about which ones we put in. There's a high bar to clear to go on the list. And after a lot of discussion, we believe Farewell does clear that bar. It's a card many players have asked for since we instituted the Game Changer list. If you're playing at bracket 2, a lot of people do not enjoy this level of sweeper. It just totally resets the game, makes games take twice as long or what have you.
Yep.
And it really is best in class. It shuts down a lot of strategies. I'm not saying that disruption is bad or board sweepers are bad or anything like that, but this is so best in class that it really kind of radically, reshapes the game.
Yeah.
We decided to push that one up. There's still tons of great options for your bracket 2 decks. You've got Austere Command, Merciless Eviction, all the way down the chain. Chroma's Vengeance if you're old school like me, But putting this one on the Game Changer list is something I'm pretty happy with. And from reading most of the comments yesterday, I would say, there's certainly been some debate. More people are for than against.
Fair enough. All right. That's all the actual changes, but the article itself discussed some other cards that you all had talked about. What were some of those cards and some of that discussion like?
Yeah, so I'll kind of cover 2 large categories here. The first category are other cards we looked at unbanning and talked about pretty seriously back and forth, and there's kind of 3 cards in this category. The cards are Iona, Shield of Emeria, Sundering Titan, and he only has one name, Grizzlebrand. No appellation for that guy. And we kind of tossed it out to the community to get thoughts on these 3 cards. I'll kind of just go really brief on those 3 cards. Sundering Titan, blowing up lands, maybe the most hated thing in all of Magic. People don't love that. But a couple things. One, it's very expensive, as I mentioned earlier. The bar to clear is getting higher and higher for these expensive cards to stay on the ban list. 2, in a world full of mini-colored decks and players ramping out fast, maybe blowing some of those lands up is not the most horrible thing in the world. And 3, and I think probably the strongest argument, is that in a world of brackets, land destruction is kind of gated behind that bracket system, right? So if it was to fall down and be a game changer at bracket 3, it wouldn't show up that much.
Yeah.
Iona is not necessarily the most fun card to play against, especially for a monocolored deck or a 2-color deck. You get a lot of your cards cut off. It is also a big angel that a lot of people really love. There can be some political counterplay, and oh man, I'm a 2-color deck and they named blue. Can someone help me out to get rid of this thing? It's definitely not a problem when hard cast. It's only a problem when reanimated. And the third card is in a slightly different category. I would call like Sundering Titan and Iona like low risk, maybe low reward cards where it's like, well, they might not be as large of a risk to take off, but it's unclear how strong the reward is, where Iona is maybe kind of frustrating if it shows up, same for Sundering Titan. Grizzlebrand is a card that I could say is a high risk, probably high reward card. It is extremely strong. You have 40 life points in Commander. You play this thing, you draw 21 cards, you're off to the races. It is also a card players love. It's shown up in basically every format it's ever been legal in. It is an iconic story character. Of the cards on the ban list, I've had to tell people they have to take Grizzlebrand out of their Commander decks probably more than any other card. I've seen like people sit down, castle Grizzlebrand, and been like, hey, sorry, did you know you can't do that? Because it's just so iconic and players love playing with it. No, I don't want to use any like small sample size experience to like point in a direction, but I think that is something that is discussable, and we've been talking about it, and we kind of wanted to float that one out there to the community to see what they thought about this kind of card. And reading the reactions over the first day has been so interesting, right? It ranges from "Are you nuts? This card is broken beyond belief," all the way to "I love Grizzlebrand, please unban it," right? Yeah. People making their free Grizzlebrand T-shirts or whatever. So anyway, there'll be a lot of discussion around those three cards in particular. The fourth card I'll mention just briefly, maybe we'll get into it later in questions, is Jeweled Lotus. A lot of notes around that card. Basically what I say in the article is what I'll repeat here, which is our stance hasn't really changed from what I said last year in the article, which is it could come off at some point. It's certainly on the table. It's not like verboten or what have you. But at this time, we've decided to not take it off, and we'll keep an eye on it in the future.
Okay. All right, we're going to jump into the Q&A portion of the show for the rest of the 24 minutes. Questions can be about any format. Any format that had changes, didn't have changes. It helps me catch them in chat if you tag @Magic at the beginning, and then we can grab those, and I'll ask our two experts here, or we'll cover some stuff. Or in this case, I'm going to cover a question on Legacy that I saw a few times. Since we haven't talked about it, Carmen Complarens usually comes on the show. We had you two to cover the formats that had changes today, but I did ask Carmen about Legacy because we got a couple of these. So I'll read the question and then I'll give Carmen's response. So let's read this one. There were a couple questions all in the same. Please comment on Oops All Spells and Legacy. It's been a top deck for the past year, has terrible play patterns and the highest win rate in Legacy challenges of highly played decks. It was not mentioned in the article despite promises for low bar of activation in previous BNR articles. So I spoke to Carmen beforehand. The answer is basically that the win rate for that deck has not persisted. It is high visibility because it's weird, and it has had success. It wins an event every once in a while or top eights, but overall its win percentage is not good. And so it simply has not put up the rate to make it into that discussion. There's also some consideration for it being an on-ramp into Legacy. A lot of the cards in that deck are relatively new and not printed way back when, and so players who are just trying to get into Legacy sometimes gravitate towards that deck just because the cards are more accessible. But the biggest thing is that the win rate simply has not caught up with it. It is visible. It catches headlines when it does because it's a weird, interesting deck, but it's not good enough to get there right now. Also in Legacy, there were questions about Tamio and blue-black tempo. The answer there is that one is a little bit more on the team's radar, but the population and win rate are still within bounds. The other thing Carmen said was that with the banning of was it Entomb, was it Entomb or Reanimate? I'm drawing a blank. With the most recent banning in Legacy, the metagame's still shifting pretty rapidly, and so they're still seeing a lot of churn into what that format's going to land at, and so they're still watching it.
I think it's Entomb, yeah.
It was Entomb, yeah. I just second-guessed myself when I said it. But all right. Well, let's keep going on some questions from chat. Gavin.
It's me.
We're going to get a lot of questions that, what about this card in Commander? We'll try to get to as many of those as we can, but...
Can I say something about that?
Sure.
I'll happily answer as many questions as Blake chooses to ask me about what about this card. I will say, and I'll direct everybody to last year when we did our 5 unbannings last year, I wrote a very long appendix at the end of the article and in the video that I put up that goes over every single banned card currently on the Commander ban list. So if you're wondering about what I think about a certain card or what we think about a certain card, there's something there for you to go read. I'm not saying it's necessarily 100% exactly the same as what we would agree today. Obviously, you go back and read that, and I'll have a sentence about biorhythm in there, and clearly we unbanned that card. But that'll give you a really good head start for how we feel about things. So I've been directing a lot of folks to that article because we already did the work, and it's already out there. So just letting you know that, although I'll probably answer a bunch of those questions again right now.
I think it's a great call. This one is a little bit more interesting than Why Not This card because it talks about also the philosophy of them being printed in sets. So the Dockside Extortionist, but it's in the Avatar set. Any discussion of unbanning? So I think maybe the question there is like, do you all look at the upcoming printings of things and make decisions on that, or how does that work?
Yeah, so first of all, I'll say that Dockside Extortionist was chosen to be in Avatar as a special, it was a special guest or on the bonus sheet, whichever.
Yeah, it was on the bonus sheet, yeah.
On the bonus sheet before it was banned, right? That really gives you an idea of how far ahead we work on sets. We were working years and years ahead on these things, and so sometimes things get locked in before they can change. Of course, we talked about Dockside Extortionist, like we've talked about basically every card on the ban list except for maybe the Power 9. Those ones are pretty intractable. But I would say, I mean, obviously speaking for myself here, but I think Dockside is pretty unlikely to get unbanned. Of the cards that were banned in that banned announcement, I think Dockside has the worst play patterns. It is really easy to go infinite with. It just generates a ton of treasure. It makes these huge turns that put one player super far ahead. Not a lot of Dockside Extortionist fans. It's a card design that I was not involved in, but I do regret that we made. And so, while certainly it's something we could talk about in the future and we'll continue to talk about, I don't think it'll come off. That's what I'll say right now. When it comes to looking at cards in future sets and about what goes where, I don't want that to influence what cards we're banning and unbanning. We should make the right cards for that we want to make for sets at the time, and the commander should do what's right, that's healthy for the format. And if that means that sometimes a Dockside Extortionist shows up, then it shows up. A great example here is Rhystic Study. We talked about Rhystic Study, if we're going to ban or unban it a lot. We talked about that in the article. And whether or not it's showing up in any future sets did not impact our discussion at all, right? If we did ban Rhystic Study, you'd probably have some future printings of it because it's a card we like to reprint, to keep them out there, and to give you all cool versions of it. And that would be a thing that would happen at some point or another. But that is not a factor in the discussion here.
Great question here that I'll take, actually. I may have missed this. Do we know when the next BNR will be? So typically we put the next BNR date in the article. We just missed that this time. That said, earlier we had released what we called a tentative list of dates for 2026. It was slightly incomplete as we got towards the end of the year, but it did have March 23rd on there for the next one. That is the correct date. March 23rd will be the next BNR date for 60-card formats. Yeah, Gavin and his crew will do what they do, but... Yeah,
and as mentioned earlier, in case you're wondering about Commander, we said we'd come back. I think the article says May or June is when you'll hear from us again. Not necessarily for BNR, but just with some more thoughts at the very least.
Yep. All right, Gavin, I'll throw this one. It's a card question, but
I like cards.
Can you comment on Rhystic Study in CEDH?
Yes, I can. First of all, I'll say, before I go any further, I am not a CEDH player. I mean, I've played a few games of CEDH, but it's not my bread and butter. But we do have some great folks on the panel who are CEDH experts. Deco, Lua, Hire, Rebel, they all know CEDH pretty well. Yep. And we've talked about this card a lot. We talked about it a lot in the summit. And look, I'll go ahead and say that I know Rhystic Study is kind of a brutal card in CEDH right now. It comes down, it really warps the game. Players are casting a lot of spells, they're trying to take a lot of game actions, the amount of cards you are drawing for Rhystic Study is immense, and while normally my glib answer of just try paying the 1 or something like that, which is not really true but is funny to say, in lower brackets doesn't even apply to CEDH, right? You don't have the mana around to even pay for all the things that you're trying to do. So I recognize that it's a really big problem in CEDH. The flip side of that is that CEDH is a really small percentage of the players playing Commander. We estimate it's less than 1% of players are CEDH players, and while they are a vocal group online and we want to listen and want to take that into account when making decisions, we have to do what's right for casual Commander first and foremost. Where Rhystic Study is played by a lot of people and enjoyed. One thing I've seen a lot on the internet over the past day is nobody likes Rhystic Study, and I wish you could see all of my comments and all the posts of people being like, "Thank goodness you did not ban Rhystic Study. I love this card." If you just go search through social or Reddit, you'll see a lot of people talking about how much they're happy Rhystic Study was not banned. So there's a lot of folks on that side of things as well. So we have to take casual into account here. And when looking at, like I'll use EDA Trek, which is an awesome tool for finding out how popular cards are. Now, granted, I'm not saying it's perfect data, but it's still pretty good data on Commander given what we have access to. About 1 in every 4 blue decks, it's like 24% of blue decks on EDA Trek that could play Rhystic Study right now, which is a ton of Rhystic Studies in decks. And if you suddenly say, hey, those all evaporate from those decks, that's a lot of people impacted by a ban in maybe a pretty frustrating way for a card that a lot of players like. Now, I'm not saying that we can't ban it or that we won't ban it ever. We've been talking about it a lot. I mean, clearly, we talked about it in an article last year, we talked about it in an article this year. It's not off the table, but we're still kind of listening, gathering feedback, because before making a decision that is at this magnitude, we would want to be really sure, and we want to make sure that the community is really in lockstep with us. So please give us your feedback, deliver your feedback from all angles of Commander, whether you're super casual, super competitive, in the middle somewhere. We want to hear from you, and I'm sure this will not be the last time we talk about Rhystic Study. So
Probably not.
that's a long monologue on Rhystic Study, but I've got a lot of thoughts. So there you go.
I'm going to take this Canadian Highlander question just
Woo!
because I get my one per show. Do you think Formidable Speaker should be pointed in Canlander? If so, how many points? No, I do not. There are a lot of tutors in Canlander. It's a strong one, but I don't think it should be pointed.
And we don't even make the calls about that format.
No,
So,
we don't. No.
If you're listening, loading ready run, this is for you.
Let's see. We're gonna let's move on to the hybrid rule question.
this is
I'm
great.
seeing a number of questions about that. So let's just throw that out there. You've made no changes to the hybrid rule. What's the thinking there? What was that discussion like?
How much time do we have? All right, so I'll give you the medium version of this. So hybrid, we talked about the hybrid change last year, and like, do we want to make this? Just as a quick recap, this would change basically hybrid from an and to an or. So imagine Kitchen Finks. Right now, your deck must be green-white color identity to play this card. In the proposed world, it could be a mono-green or mono-white deck or a red-white deck or whatever, and you could put Kitchen Finks in it. This is a change that Magic Design is really keen on. It would let us do a lot of really cool stuff. I always go back to when I was working on the first Commander Legends set, and I wanted to be able to use hybrid as like a cool linchpin where you could draft, say, a blue-white hybrid card and have it in your deck or command the deck. A lot of cool stuff we can do there and with upcoming sets. So Designs wanted this for a while, and they're keen on it. And so when the format panel was here last year, we talked about it as something, and there was enough traction on it that we then brought it to the community, which is not really that unheard of, given that about every year at some point it comes up as the hot topic. And I was honestly really expecting it to be kind of cut and dry one way or another. Like, oh, people really want this, or they really don't want this. And what we saw in the weeks after talking about that was maybe the most divided on any issue I've ever seen in the Magic community. It was like straight down the middle. It was wild. I listened to so many podcasts and watched so many videos and like read so many posts and whatever. I feel people being like, clearly it should be this way on both sides, right? I think it comes down to kind of like there's two camps. One camp is like Commander color identity is about inclusion, being these colors means I can play these colors. And the other half is like Commander identity is about exclusion, being these colors means that I can't play the other colors. All kinds of other arguments get thrown in the way. Aesthetics of my deck will look weird, all the way to I want to pump up monocolor decks. I'm not going to get into all of them. We don't have the time for that. But what is important is eventually I was like, you know what? I would love some real data on this. And I worked with our internal consumer insights team to actually go out and run some polls, gathering data from a wide swath of folks. And once again, it came down almost split exactly down the middle, which is wild. And so, we talked a lot about it internally. And ultimately, while kind of during the summit and the time thereafter, a lot of the format panel folks were more for the change. It ended up being slightly more against the change at this time. So we decided not to do it at this moment. But the other thing that I kind of saw is while there were these two camps of people that were like, I love this change or I hate this change, there was a large group in the middle that was like, hey, there's been a lot of change recently, and you say you're going to do more hybrid, but we haven't seen that yet. Can we have more time? And so to that group, I'm like, hey, that actually makes a lot of sense. We know what we're making. You guys don't know what we're making. Let's give you all some more time on this. And so I expect we'll come back next year and talk about it more and be like, hey, you've seen more cards. It's been a little bit. What do you think? And maybe reopen the conversation then. I still expect it will be somewhat split, but maybe there'll be some more time for people to think about it and to have experienced a year full of hybrid cards, which we'll see this year. There's going to be a lot of hybrid cards out there as we're making more and more of them. And that's kind of where we are on that. The last thing I'll just kind of say is I think there's some kind of conception out there in the community that this is a change we want to make to like make sure that the new hybrid cards or cards you want to go buy or whatever. That's really not why we're proposing this change. It's just about being able to unlock some more design space. And a lot of the hybrid cards we're making are like commons and uncommons. They're just cards that might slot into your decks, and you'll see what that looks like as the year goes on. So that's a long monologue on hybrid, but as you can tell, I and the others have thought a lot about it.
All right. Absolutely. I want to go over to Ian. We do have some arena-focused questions. What was the reason for nerfing Kona over banning Omniscience and Alchemy, especially after releasing Aquatic Subtlety that also enables Omniscience?
We definitely talked about banning Omniscience. The main thought with Kona, like obviously Omniscience is the big offender with Kona. It turns out it's casting all your stuff for free is really, really good. At the same time, Kona had been a problematic card in a few spots before that deck really took off. And as with all of those changes in Alchemy, one of the goals is to make the lightest touch possible.
Yeah.
Whenever we can, we want to allow a deck to exist and just pull it back in or push it up a little. We're looking to keep most of your collection working. Most of the cards in that 60 are still going to do what they're supposed to do in that deck. It's just not quite as aggressive as it is. Whereas if you ban Omniscience, that deck's like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the end of the deck.
Yeah. All right. Next, arena-focused questions. Any plans of adding more free interaction in Timeless, parentheses, Force of Will mostly, anytime soon? Going second is quite brutal in the format.
This is one of those questions.
This is where he's
wants to
computing
know about
what
the
can I
future
say
and what
in the
you can
future,
and can't
yeah.
talk about. We print a lot of cards.
Yep.
I could see some of the cards we print
Yeah.
addressing some concerns.
Okay. That's a good generic answer. I remember this question coming up a lot last year, too, where people were like, we need force and negation, we need force and negation.
Right.
And again, it was a lot of the, we know it's coming.
Yeah.
But there are always things coming that could
Yeah.
shift things radically in Timeless. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe it's a card you're expecting. Maybe it's something you've never heard of.
Yeah. I think maybe another way to get at that question is how much, obviously what gets printed on bonus sheets and whatever is you guys pick that up. But there has been some injection of cards legal for Timeless through other means on Arena. How much are you all thinking about Timeless when you create those lists?
It's certainly it's on our mind. It's a thing we talk about, especially we've added a lot of cards for the Powered Cube on Arena. And deciding which of those cards are and are not craftable. We're obviously thinking about Timeless when we're deciding what to have on the client, but not available for deck building. We do add cards directly to things from time to time. Obviously, we do anthologies and things like that.
Yep.
And also, that is always influenced by the fact that I know stuff that's coming out in 2029, and we have to decide. It turns out players don't love it when you put a card in knowing it's going to be in another set 6 months later.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. On tabletop, more reprints are great. Digitally, a lot of times they're like, I would have rather just gotten that in a draft 6 months from now. Yeah. And we're like, yeah, I know, but I can't tell you it's coming.
All right. I think we are. Oh, nope. We did have one more question for Commander side of things. Thank you for the reminder, Nate Dogg. So this will be the last question. Gavin, are there any updates on the Silver Bordered project?
Yes. So the Silver Border project, for those who don't know what that is, the really short version of it is it was a project that was kind of ongoing before everything happened with the rules committee and the format panel to help legalize some of the silver bordered cards from, say, Unglued and Unhinged that these days would be fine. For example, dice rolling cards, right? We have dice rolling in regular Magic now. We could legalize some of those. Still something that's on our back burner, on our radar. Just we've had a lot of other things we've put our focus on recently. So not opposed to it. Certainly, you'll hear more about that in the future at some point. The thing I'll say is Bracket 1 is really a great place to bring out a lot of that stuff. It's a great place to be like, hey, this card that is not normally legal is legal here. So if you want to play with a lot of that stuff, Bracket 1 is an awesome place for you. And frankly, if you show up to your die rolling deck and you're like, I have a few old Unglued cards in here, I think a lot of people would probably be like, yeah, that's cool. But nothing official at this time to announce. But definitely has not been forgotten about in our world. Thanks for bringing that up, Nate.
All right. That is going to be our show today. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Gavin. Thank you, Ian. Thank you for everyone internally who put time and effort towards the BNR announcement. We are going to be back next week. I say we. No one on this show is going to be back next week. I'm not even going to be back next week. For the Turtles debut, Hillary Thompson is going to be hosting that one. Hillary hosted the announcement for the Turtles set, and so she is going to be hosting this one as well next week, same time right here. We got some curveballs coming for you for Turtles. It's been an interesting year so far.
Yeah, totally normal preview schedule.
Totally normal preview. It's not. But we've leaned into it. It's going to be fun. So we will see you back here next week at 10 a.m. Pacific time for the debut of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Until then, see you next week.